G'day, my name's Alan Gamble. Welcome to another episode of Aussie Box Office Charts. Bit of a dull week, but we do have some things to talk about, so let's dive in. Starting with the top 5, Zootopia 2 holds top spot with another $3.5 million. Its third week in release, dropping in just 15%, which is a remarkably good hold. I think that movie is going to end up doing quite well, for a current total of just over $17.1 million. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, unfortunately, in its second week, dropped 53% for a current total of $6.6 million, bringing in another $1.7 million this weekend. We'll check in on Five Nights at Freddy's just in a little bit. Wicked for Good starts to stabilise a little, dropping just 36% in its fourth week of release, with another $1.6 million for a current total of $27.4 million. A good number, but not as good as the original, and we'll get into that shortly after the top 10. Here's an interesting story for this week. Dhurandhar jumps up 102% on its second week, bringing in $1.2 million for a current total of $2.4 million. It brought in just $600,000 last weekend, which is about average for a big Indian cinema release. So for it to bring in $1.2 million in its second week, that's really good word of mouth. If you're unfamiliar, that is a Hindi language action thriller out of India about an Indian spy sent to infiltrate the Karachi mafia in Pakistan. I might have to try and squeeze that onto my watch list before the end of the year. And rounding out the top 5 is Nuremberg, dropping just 5% in its second week of release, with another $600,000 for a current total of $1.8 million. Moving on to 6 through 10, not too much exciting stuff here. Now You See Me, Now You Don't lands at number 6 with another $260,000. Its fifth week in release, dropping 27% for a current total of $6.1 million. Eternity lands at number 7 in its second week of release, dropping just 32% for a current total of just under $1 million. With another $250,000 this weekend. Jujutsu Kaisen Execution with another $200,000. Unfortunately, that is dropping a more traditional anime amount, dropping 66% in its second week. Now, my understanding is that's not actually like a special movie like Infinity Castle, but just more of a collection of episodes and a few new episodes from a season. So I'm not expecting that one to do much more, but it is clocking over just over $1 million. Our two new entries for the week at number 9 and 10 with Ella McKay with $126,000 and Pets on a Train with $117,000. Underwhelming results from them, but I don't think anyone was expecting them to set the charts on fire. Alright, specialty chart time. So I thought I'd start with Zootopia versus Zootopia 2. We looked at the opening last week where Zootopia 2 opened significantly higher than Zootopia 1 in a nice healthy position. This is a total box office that they made in Australia. Zootopia in 2016 brought in $28 million or just over. Zootopia 2 is currently at 17.1 after 2 weeks. That's a really good number. We're going to see how this continues, but I think it might have the legs because we're going into the holidays and it's holding really well. So we're going to have to wait and see, but I think it's going to do numbers. Update for Five Nights at Freddy's, but I'm putting them in context of the video game adaptations and their openings last week. So you can see there where Five Nights at Freddy's opened as the 4th highest video game movie of all time in Australia. Five Nights at Freddy's 2, significantly behind the pace. If we go to total domestic gross, so how much they've got to bring in its entire run, you can see Five Nights at Freddy's is the 6th highest video game movie of all time, as far as I can go back on historical records. Five Nights at Freddy's 2 has a little bit to go to catch that, and I don't think it's going to. I genuinely don't think it's going to catch the original Five Nights at Freddy's. It might pass Rampage from 2018 or Mortal Kombat from 2021, but I don't think it's going to beat Assassin's Creed from 2016. Now, these numbers are unadjusted for inflation as well. And you can see the two at the top, obviously, are a Minecraft movie from earlier this year and Super Mario Bros. From 2023. Nothing comes close to those guys. Finally, a chart I'm having a lot of fun monitoring. Wicked versus Wicked for Good. At week 3, Wicked had taken back the lead of where it was in its third week, and it has extended that lead quite a bit in its fourth week. That means Wicked for Good was more front-loaded but word of mouth was not as good, or people just weren't as interested, or people are going to wait till it goes to streaming or premium video on demand. But that is losing speed and rapidly. That is not a good sign. It's still doing really, really well. Like, we can't lie. We're not going to say it's an absolute flop. It's already well on the top 10 charts, and it's probably going to go a little bit higher. It's just not going to be $48 million. And speaking of the top 10 and Wicked for Good, here is the 2025 top 10 of the Australian box office. No movement this week. However, Wicked for Good has extended its lead on Superman with $27.4 million, and it is closing in on both How to Train Your Dragon at $30.4 million and F1 the movie at $30.2 million. If it can get there, it can jump up 2 spots, and it's very close to Jurassic World Rebirth. It's not going to pass Lilo and Stitch at this stage, I don't think, and it's certainly not going to dethrone a Minecraft movie, but it's still got legs. And just outside the top 10 is Zootopia 2 at $17.1 million. So next week, Zootopia 2 will be on this chart. How high is it going to go? We're going to have to wait and see. But we've got some movement on the top 10 for now. Moving on to upcoming releases. This weekend, theatrical, 18th of December, there's one big headline. Avatar, Fire and Ash. Avatar 3, the latest of the Juggernaut franchise, Avatar from James Cameron, releases this week, starring Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana, Sigourney Weaver, and Stephen Lang. If that's not your speed, we also have David, a new animated story of David with voices from Phil Wickham and Brandon Engman. In limited release, so check your smaller and indie cinemas, we have The History of Sound, the latest awards contender for the season, directed by Oliver Hernandez and starring Paul Mescal and Josh O'Connor. We also have Gezi Town, a Chinese war drama directed by Kong Sheng. Moving across to streaming, there's just a couple of returning series, starting with Fallout returning for its second season on Amazon Prime, which kicks off on the 17th of December. And we also have Emily in Paris returning for its 5th season on Netflix that you can find there on December 18th. So with an extra day off last week, I ended up with 7 movies for this week's challenge of Favourite Challenge of the Year. So let's dive in. First up was the start of my 2025 catch-up run with Summer of '69, directed by Gillian Bell, starring Chloe Fineman, Sam Morlos, Natalie Morales, and Charlie Day. A young high school student hires a stripper to teach her about sex so she can make a play for the high school crush. This was a fun but simple movie. It was very paint by numbers in terms of a coming-of-age high school comedy. But every so often there'd be a line or a series of events that would surprise me and raise the bar from what I was expecting and give me a good laugh. Overall, a solid movie. Next up was another 2025 catch-up movie with Ephus, directed by Carlson Lund and starring Cliff Blake, Stephen Rachocha, Timothy Taylor, and Ethan Ward. A small recreational baseball field is set to be demolished and has one last community game by some casual players. A small slice-of-life indie movie telling us a tale of a final match of a soon-to-be knocked-down baseball field. Very slice-of-life movies, and they're not my favourite type of movie, but those that do love those type of movies, this is a real gem. Wasn't quite for me, but it was still a great movie if that's more your jam. Up third was Highest to Lowest, directed by Spike Lee and starring Denzel Washington and Jeffrey Wright. A big-time music producer is the target of a ransom plot and has to decide what type of person he is. I enjoyed this one more than I expected, given the middling mixed reviews on it. It's not like the most amazing movie of all time, and it's far from Spike Lee's best movies, but it's still a fine crime movie. I didn't regret watching it. Next was a recap rewatch of Relay from earlier in 2025, directed by David Mackenzie and starring Riz Ahmed, Lily James, and Sam Worthington, giving us a story of a corporate broker that makes deals between powerful companies and people that have blackmail material or sensitive information about said company. A great little 2025 movie, a lot of fun, and while it could have gone somewhere more interesting in the third act, I'll forgive it because of the strong acts 1 and 2. Next we had 13 Days, 13 Nights, The Hell of Kabul, a French war thriller directed by Martin Burbelon and starring Roshi Zem, Leah Couldry, and Sid Babbitt Kudson. Amid the chaos of the US withdrawal from Afghanistan, Commander Mohammed Bida and his men are in charge of security at the French embassy and need to find their way to the airport. Sounds simple enough, little bit of a complex scenario. A solid modern war thriller that reminded me a lot from Escape from Mogadishu. Different time period and a different place on the globe, but a very similar vibe of Western forces pulling out of a third world country that they were exploiting, leaving chaos in their wake. Finally was a double feature of Avatar and Avatar: The Way of Water from 2009 and 2022 respectively. Directed by James Cameron and starring, once again, Sam Worthington, Zoe Saldana and Stephen Lang, telling us the stories of the beautiful Pandora and the creatures that live there and the evil humans. Rewatching both of them to prepare for the new one that's coming out this week, still very pretty movies, but with a fairly simple premise and ideals. That doesn't make them not worth watching. James Cameron still knows how to make basic movie concepts that just work, cheer for the good guys, boo for the bad guys, etc. It's James Cameron, he knows what he's doing. And if you can switch your brain off, you can have a good time. This week's challenge is a fun one of my favourites from last year, not seen by any other challenger in 2025. So basically, last year there was 3,200 movies that people watched through the year. This time it's 4,500 movies that have been watched this year for the challenge. So the challenge is to watch a movie that has not been watched at all by anyone for any challenge this year. So it's a great fun challenge. I'm not going into my shortlist, but you can see all these movies, 80 for Brady, Something for Otto, Real Pain. These are things you can't watch for this challenge. Great fun challenge, not showing my shortlist. But that is it for me this week. Obviously, Avatar is the big one this weekend. I will be catching it hopefully on Thursday, and that should take number one next weekend. But don't expect a massive week 2 because Christmas holidays. Never a big movie going week. The week after and into the January holidays, that's when Avatars have made all their money. So Avatars have always been a slow burn at the box office, so we'll keep track of it as we move into the new year. But until then, watch more movies. See you next time. Bye.